understand like where you're coming from, then it's easier to like correct it, or it's easier to like give yourself some compassion, like taking that time, like wanting to change, because sometimes it feels like the battle's not over and I still have like a lot of growing to do.
What does personal growth mean and what does it cost? Hey, I'm Madison, and this is Growing Pains, a space where Gen Z gets real about the messy, meaningful process of growth and what it really means to our generation. Each episode, we have Gen Z individuals diving into how growth shapes our careers, relationships, and identities, and how things like culture, environment, and failure challenge us along the way. Because growth isn't always pretty, but it's always personal. Personal growth isn't always perfect. Our next guest recalls moments in her journey where mistakes led to lessons learned, and how leaning on her community and staying true to herself saved her in a time of need.
Hi, my name is Isabella Hedrick, and I'm 28 years old. So personal growth to me means, I think it's what's important to you that you're like changing and growing in. For me, I think becoming like a better adult, or like it's almost like becoming an adult. I've learned what I have still to learn about.
Accepting change and working on yourself are some of the steps in Isabella's growth. She shares when growth was important to her.
Understanding that and like realizing all of the things that I have to grow, it's a good marker to understand like where I'm at and where I need to be. And so I think until you're in those situations, you don't really know what you don't know yet. And so I feel like personal growth is discovering what you don't know that you don't know yet, and then tackling those things, and then like looking back and being like, oh wow, like I did all of that.
Today, self-acceptance and accountability are lessons some have forgotten. Reflection is a growth method that can lead those who feel lost in a brighter direction.
Sometimes it's hard to self-reflect and like actually see like where you are in life and like where you're coming from and how your thoughts work. But I think that self-reflection is a really good way to like understand like your core thoughts about yourself.
Holding space for yourself grows your empathy towards others more than anything. Isabella believes that crediting yourself for your accomplishments can go a long way.
I think if you understand like where you're coming from, then it's easier to like correct it, or it's easier to like give yourself some compassion, like self-compassion for yourself, if you can see where you're coming from. And you can only do that if you really spend time with yourself and like reflecting on like the inner you, like the real you. And I think that's how you, like a good way to measure your growth is by self-reflecting from time to time and like focusing on like who I am versus, not in comparison with other people, but who I am versus who I used to be is like a good measure of how you can like measure your growth.
No growth journey is complete if not accompanied by obstacles along the way. Isabella shares her experience with challenges and learning how to overcome them.
I think the biggest obstacle that I ever faced in my like personal growth journey was getting out of a toxic relationship, and the realization that I deserved better than that was really hard for me. I think, but coming out of that, I feel like I've grown so much since then. I feel like sometimes I feel like I slip back into the old version of me, but I feel like coming out of that toxic relationship really like launched my growth. And that was really hard because sometimes it feels like the battle's not over and I still have like a lot of growing to do. But that definitely was like a turning point for me, like was getting out of that toxic relationship.
Challenges are a part of growth. It shapes you into who you are to your core. But how does social media alter the facade some put on?
I can't tell you how different I am, like, before and after that. Like, it really was, like, super challenging, and now I feel like my outlook on life is so different. But I think it's because we pretend to have it all together that, like, no wonder people don't see me. It's because, I put on this tough exterior, and so they don't ever get the chance to see the real me. So I'm trying to be more open and vulnerable so that, like, the connections that I make are like you see the actual me.
Leaning on her community helped Isabella in a major way. She shares how the acceptance of others led to her own growth in self-acceptance.
When I was in the thick of it and I was so confused and I could recognize that the relationship wasn't good for me, but I didn't know what to do about it. The biggest thing that helped me through it was my friends. So I made friends with these older ladies at my church, and they really helped me. They never judged me or anything, but they could tell that I was depressed, and that they're like, oh, maybe it's connected to this guy. But they never they never condemned me. They never made me feel bad about it, but they were just there for me and to speak encouraging things we love you and you're worth more than this. That kind of stuff really helped me combat the maybe I'm not good enough for actual love, or maybe I'm not ever gonna get someone better than the bare minimum. You know what I mean? I feel like having people who speak into you, speak kindness and life into you, really helped me.
Community acts as a bridge to self-acceptance, but therapy has popularly become a tool many use in their growth journeys.
I also am going to therapy, and I feel like sometimes they just lead you to understand more of yourself. And I feel like my therapist just asks me questions and wants me to answer them myself, but it almost leads me to find my own answers and to understand myself. I think is really important. Understanding my own identity really helped me to realize that I'm worth more than the bare minimum.
Aside from therapy, journaling and self-reflection has become a widely used method in growth.
I've been journaling a lot lately, and I feel like that helps me to not keep it all up inside me. I like to bottle up my emotions, and so writing it out helps, and finding an outlet for all of these emotions that I can't necessarily put words to, that really helps.
In order for growth to occur, you must be willing to accept change with open arms. Isabella is an example of how wanting to be better has to be for yourself and not for others.
Taking that time, wanting to change and wanting a different life for me, and going after it and constantly pursuing me, I guess, really helped me to find a different way than settling for that toxic relationship.
Isabella shares how, despite imposter syndrome, she refuses to let it affect her growth and her goal to better herself for herself.
When I am trying to push boundaries, it's really hard I feel like I get imposter syndrome when I'm trying to push my boundaries with school things, and it gets very overwhelming and intimidating, and it almost paralyzes me, and I don't even want to do the smallest step sometimes. And I feel like a lot of the time I really have to take a step back.
With growth comes responsibility. Isabella shares how filling up your plate can take a toll on your mental wellness.
It's hard for me to remember that because I really want, to start something and finish it all in one sitting, but that's not feasible, I think, especially for kids in college. Our lives are so crazy. For me, I watch my nephew, and I work, and I have church stuff, and I go to school, and so it feels like I maybe don't have my priorities in order, and sometimes my schedule gets crazy, and it's really overwhelming sometimes, and so I have to take that step back. I have to schedule it out. I have to look at it, look at everything, and be all right, it's not feasible to get this project done all in one day, but it's okay if I go and take this time at the beach. I think I put a lot of stuff in a box, and I'm there's only a solution in this box, but I think sometimes if you take a break, then you can see that there are solutions outside of the box that you've put yourself in.
Growth requires making mistakes and using them to learn and better ourselves.
Isabella proves how reflection and accountability go hand in hand when our journeys start to feel a little challenging. In our next episode, we'll learn how personal growth shapes our careers and how mindfulness and staying grounded help not only ourselves but also those around you. I'm Madison Hagio, and we're just scratching the surface of the complexities of growth, because growth isn't always pretty, but it's always personal.